Have the council members up here. Have the council members up here. You ready? Thank you. Okay, we're back in session again in the, we're on old business, and there was an item added, old business public orders.
Okay, let me just give you an update. The bad news is that, I guess it was last week I came over here for a meeting of the Arts Commission, and they didn't have a quorum. So I was going to brief them about the issue of the ordinance and the things that I needed to get help from them on, and also Sunshine Law, because they requested a briefing on that as well, and we could not proceed with that meeting. However, I did gather some additional data. I gathered some from a member of the board and a director of the gallery, as well as the gallery over, or the history in Maitland. And bluntly, I can't find any support for either a percentage-based figure or a per capita, per person-based figure. I had hoped, with the full resources of that commission, that we might have been able to come up with something, but I haven't. I was also going to use the opportunity to explain how these fees work, what the Supreme Court has said about what you have to do and the tests you have to go through and so on. So the update is that I went to the sources that I told you I would, but for not meeting with the entire commission, I did consult the two Mount Laura arts people, and got a lot of information, not surprisingly, on studies about the value of public art and what it shows it does for a community and all of those things. But they weren't studies as to, okay, now how do we come up with a rate and apply it? And so, to make an analogy, it was like the water study people said, you really need a water system, but didn't tell me how to pay for it. It would be about the same kind of analogy. And so, we know we want it, we know it's good for the public, we know it's good for us. We don't know how to justify charging somebody to pay for it. So that is the very brief update of where we are. There is a drafted ordinance with a provision in it that's ready to go, that's based on a percentage. But the missing piece is a study that backs that percentage. So that's where we are.
Shepard, any update on that? You mentioned a California case.
Yes.
Pending. Any update on that?
Well, there's no update, but the ordinance, well, actually there is an update. I forgot about this. We reached out to it's a town of Oakland, or city of Oakland, California, and because I thought someone might ask a question about what are they doing and how do they get there, their ordinance is strikingly similar to ours, and I asked, we called them, I said, please let's check out, and the lady that you all met Saturday, Miss Odette, who works for me, reached out to the city attorney out there and asked, how did they come up with the ordinance? And not surprisingly, she said, well, we copycatted our neighbors. That sounds familiar. And then secondarily, how did she justify race? Because we were hoping that you were done a historical study and was told, quite, I have a direct quote in the email, but it is, yeah, we really wish we had done one. And they're being sued by Pacific Legal Foundation, which is a property rights organization. Now, I want to be clear on this. I'm not an anti-property rights guy, much to the contrary. However, in this particular instance, if I'm going to justify what you're doing, I need to be able to do it because they will be one of the organizations that will challenge it, as they did in the city of Oakland. So that's the answer to the question.
My question is, I know you reached out to Maitland and maybe other Florida cities. Did you go outside of Florida to see if there was anything, nationwide, anybody?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, when I reached, well, it's kind of not accurate to say that I reached out to Maitland, because when I was reaching out to Maitland or the folks in Mount Dora, what I said is there a national organization or organizations who would have commissioned commission such a study, that y'all might be members of, that you could go to and say, well, of course, like for example, a terrible example, but it makes the point. If you want to know about guns, you know who to call, right? The NRA, because they've got studies upon studies upon studies. So I assume, I'm not an arts person, except that I like to go look at them. I assume that in the arts community, that it might be the National Endowment for the Arts or some other organization, they'd say, oh, of course, there's a right line, here's how we do it, and so forth. And there is. It's this percentage. But when you ask the other question, which is, how did you get there, that's the one that leaves you lacking. So it's a great idea, but the problem is when you start looking at it the way the courts now look at it, like another impact fee, it's not that it's a good number, it's that it doesn't have a basis that you can go to court to justify.
Is there another meeting proposed for the?
I don't know, I don't know whether it's been rescheduled, but certainly at some point I'm gonna be back in front of their body, if for nothing else, well, I think I'll be, subject to sunshine, given the opportunity to have that information. But certainly if I'm not, somebody will be.
Well, I guess from a practical standpoint, and I think you're legally defensible, we could really get our lunch money taken away. From an action standpoint as a council, then, one of our options, I guess, is to just completely get rid of, the ordinance. The other one, you had mentioned a little bit of a baby slice there on the commercial versus residential, but you haven't yet either found anything to win in that one.
Yeah, it's the same, the commercial is almost a non-starter unless there's an industry out there that, study that can show me how. Because as I said, it's hard to figure out how, for example, opening up a nice dress store impacts the need for public art. Or for that matter, theater, which we're dealing with here. With residences, and in a city like Mount Dora specifically, where arts are such a big deal, and you're adding more people who are coming, amongst other reasons for art, you can at least make the first part of the test, at least arguably, that is that it's rationally based. Your extraction of funds or art is rationally based. It's important to the community, all those other things. So then you're on part two of the test, the roughly proportional part, and that's where you need the study or something that says if you apply 0.5% to the cost of construction to a max cap of 150,000, which is what a lot of the ordinances say, what are you basing on? That's the good stuff. So so an option, to your point, and that has been discussed, although the source of revenue hasn't been specifically identified, is okay if we think it's important, and certainly it would be on a more regular basis for the Arts Commission to know what money's coming in, because ironically, after we passed this ordinance, we went into the Great Recession and there was no new development to carry anybody. So you can make as a part of your future budgets, okay, we will put from the general fund a certain amount to fund public art on an annual basis. It'll be subject to up or down based on who's here and what they like and don't like. But that is a dedicated source of revenue from which you can draw. There is also a suggestion that has been made, and in a community like this, it certainly carries more potential for success than in others, and that is of setting up a separate 501c3. Why would I say that? Because you can make a donation to a city, for example, and say it's for art, and you can deduct it. So why would you set up a separate 501c3? Well, the answer is many, not all, but many donors like to be anonymous. And as a result, when they give it to a city, what do we all know about things that are provided to cities? They're public record. And so by setting up a private 501c3 corporation with its own citizen board, they can take in those donations and provide them to the city for use in setting up or using or giving recommendations. Right now, we have our own Arts Commission, have them make recommendations for use of those funds and how they might be utilized. There's always the catch, and you've heard me talk about it briefly because we don't really have that in front of us in sharp focus, although rest assured it's very easy to get up there in a very quick minute, and that is, what's art? And that's the debate that I try to keep governments out of. And that's what really can get nasty in a hurry. But the bottom line is, in terms of getting the funds or trying to find a way to supplant this ordinance, if it goes away, those are a couple of mechanisms you might consider.
Is this a something that the community trust could take on as far as have the 501c3 be administered
Yes,
through
potentially.
that? Okay.
Mr. Olson?
I take it when you talked about art, nobody knows what it looks like. It'd be just like the US Supreme Court not knowing what photography is,
Yeah.
but they know when they see it.
And the controversy, thankfully, we have been blessed in not having this controversy visited upon us yet. But I will tell a story on one of my cities, and they wouldn't object to me telling it because as a result, some very good things happened. But at the time, it felt like, I don't know, kidney stones passing. They had an organization that was a community organization called the Maitland Chorus and Orchestra. It has now become something called PAM, Performing Arts of Maitland, which is a cultural partner of the city. But at the time, it was a private organization that bore the Maitland city name, and they put together, independent of us, all of their music programs. But we as a city donate a certain amount of money to them on an annual basis, subject to them asking for it, $5,000. Some not real significant dollars, but for an organization like that, all money is significant. And they came up with a program shortly after 9/11 called Salute to America after 9/11, Patriotic Tribute, something. And they had a song in there, the name which now, Rockabye My Baby with a Dixie Melody, which has a line in it about Old Black Joe, which I don't, that's an old song. But that song and that line became tremendously controversial because there were people who were saying, what's the big deal? And don't tell us how to run our arts. And then there were other people say this is incredibly offensive and you're not getting it. And the city, who had done nothing except say, here's money, go spend it. We don't have anything to do with the program. Got stuck in the middle of a very nasty public fire.
So, moving it along. So, I mean, from a practical standpoint, don't we then have to, get rid of the ordinance? Right? We could do that now, and now I'm using a little bit of a air quote. And then in the budget cycle, which is, I know, right around the corner.
Yeah, it is.
Make a decision on what to
Yeah,
do.
you could do that, absolutely. I mean, obviously, we don't have it in front of us tonight, but if you said, hey, we want to have this thing repealed in the next meeting, you could. That's not a problem if that's what you choose to do. I haven't spoken yet, or someone hasn't spoken yet, to get the benefit of the full Arts Commission to see if they have any more sources than we have tapped. But again, to Ms. Tillett's question, what we were saying to them is, you all have the connections with national organizations. Is there anything I can go to and rely on? So far, it's come up with snake eyes.
What Mr. Slavy has suggested is obviously the easiest, legally easiest route to go. I'd like to have, and I certainly can support that or a variation on that theme, but it might be a good idea to have some of these discussed alternatives, just as kind of a checklist that we can all look at and discuss further. If we could put those in a little bit of a, well, here's one that might work, and here's another one that's,
And
just keep it might work. And
if that's the direction, that let's move towards a repeal, then I can lay out here the steps we go through.
I'd still like to have another chance to get the Arts Commission back and get everybody together and sort of follow the process, and then from there, I guess it would go to P&Z.
If the process is that we have a supportable ordinance, yes, P&Z then here. And if it's not,
Getting rid of the ordinance, revoking the ordinance, does that have to go to P&Z as well?
it probably does, but the more important thing is, I've got to be given the right, I haven't yet been reviewed with the authority to make these decisions on my own.
No.
So I have to come back to you after the Arts Commission and say, okay, I'm up against a wall, and so with your permission, I will proceed down the
Yeah,
review.
understand, yeah, but I would still like, before we start doing anything as far as repealing ordinances, I want to see what the Public Arts Commission can come up with, if anything.
Just keep in mind that part of that ordinance also is the Public Arts Commission. That forms the Public Arts Commission, so, I don't want to get rid of the
Yeah, we
Public Arts
can
Commission.
repeal portions.
Okay, good, that's good.
I might also suggest that somebody talk to the Arts Commission and encourage them, if there's not going to be a meeting with the majority, that somebody let the city attorney know and others that are responsible for serving them and spending our money to do that courtesy of a call to let them know. I mean, I got the report of that as well, from some of the frustrated members that were there.
Mr. Brown?
I understand Mr. Slavy's sense of urgency because I think we need to ditch this ordinance as well. But we asked, and we have this Public Arts Commission, hopefully it was just a fluke that they didn't have the quorum and so on. I would recommend that we give it another month, and hopefully sometime during the month of March, the Public Arts Commission could meet with Mr. Shepherd or one of his team, and we'll kind of reform it after that.
So, and I'm an art lover, I have a master's degree in arts, in economics. I guess I'm troubled because, if we wait too long, I just, in my fuzzy crystal ball, I see that this Epic Theater thing falls apart, and then it's because we didn't do what seems so obvious that we're going to have to be painful, that we're gonna have to just repeal it. I would rather just repeal it and then rebuild it, if I'm using the right terms, with the idea, so that we keep things moving forward. And I know that's, it's a contrasting, but it gets us moving.
Is there a way to bridge some, whatever we need to do here is Epic Theater the only thing that we're talking about, Tony? The only commercial property we're talking about that's got this?
It's the only one that I have any knowledge of. I can't speak to Mr. Egerton, he might know of other projects out there, but that's the only one I know. And again, we gave them a clear path, because if they just escrow the money, then once we get it repealed, then they get the money back and everybody, nothing is held up. So I'm not trying to be a smart aleck. $100,000 or even $150,000 for a several $1 million project is literally peanuts, and particularly when it's just escrowed.
I don't know, I don't care how rich you are, $150,000, $100,000 is still, is not chump change in anybody's pocket, except maybe Mr. Trump, possibly, the only one. But, Mr. Egerton, is there any other, commercial ventures right now?
Yes, sir, the Christian Home Bible School is an outstanding part of this Oakwood city.
So has the Epic Theater, I mean, what's the status with, have they agreed to escrow, or?
They've been notified of the requirement, their permit is awaiting issuance, and we have not heard back from them.
Okay, and I thought a couple months ago when we started talking on this, that, it was agreed that they were all ready to go with an escrow, everybody was happy with an escrow situation, and that was.
That's what it seemed to be at the time. They seemed to have changed their position, although I have not spoken to them directly. We're just awaiting what the code requires.
Prior to the meeting, I talked with Mr. Shepherd, and I think he's got a call that he's waiting from their attorney to resolve this matter, that he had made contact with him and hasn't heard the call back.
Let me address that. I could see, Mr. Schroth, I don't know, at the last meeting, whenever, I guess a couple of weeks ago, shortly thereafter, an email rolled through, not directed to me, but copied to me since I'm the city attorney, about wondering whether or not the city council taken action to repeal the ordinance. And he basically said, I understand that hasn't happened, and I forget exactly what the communication was, but it was something to the effect that he's concerned about, or he was going to take some action. And so I immediately jumped in and emailed him directly, and I said, don't fear this, please call me. And I intended, and would still intend to tell him, look, I think that at least as it regards commercial development, the path is fairly clear. And so, if you're worried that you won't get your escrow back and somehow lose the right to challenge the fee, don't worry about it. That's what I planned to tell him, but he didn't call me back. I suspect, though, that Epic is well aware.
But it's, then we have only two companies right now that we're looking at, the Christian Bible. Can we waive to get these projects and get it rolling and get what we have to do?
that I'm aware of in the ordinance. That's the issue, because if there was discretion involved, then we wouldn't be having this issue, we'd have a different issue, which is, okay, you waived it for them, why do you? So, that's why you don't do that. It's like saying, well, can I waive the impact fee? No.
We don't know, we don't know.
But this is essentially what
We
we
don't have two on the books right now, and then anything forward will probably be, you know,
Yeah.
it's gonna be appealed anyway, so there won't be any kind of, you know, until we set up another schedule of funding mechanism for it.
And the way, unfortunately, the way it's set up is you satisfy all the requirements to issue the permit. This is one of the requirements that's set into the code.
Well, I think I have to agree with Mr. Slavy that if we are not eliminating the ordinance in its entirety, that we are deleting portions of it. And we are pretty sure that we're gonna have to delete portions of it down the road anyway. I think we should move ahead. I mean, we've been waiting a long time on this theater. That would be my recommendation. Just move ahead, take whatever action is necessary to modify the wording in the ordinance to remove that requirement, keep the rest of it intact, and then, we need to reconstruct it. You know, suppose somebody somewhere has, oh yeah, the National Endowment for the Arts has a formula to use, then we can go back and I think reconstruct it later, but, you
Do we
know.
know what section has to be?
Well, off the top of my head.
We have an ability to amend an ordinance anytime we want to.
All you gotta do is tell me this, Mr. Chairman.
That's the power of this council.
Right.
And if there are legal issues, we should recognize that there are legal issues in the ordinance that we're saying, and we should repeal the ordinance as to that issue, and then step back, take a look at it, and then move forward to correct it the way we want to do it as a council, and the citizens. The only thing I'm sensing as representing the theater, it sounds like a little bit of a game of chicken here that we're playing, and we don't want the theater to fold, but they want to leverage us, and I'm not sure where I fall on that. So,
I'll only know that there's quite a few months back, that this council gave direction to expedite this project as quickly as possible, and we still have not done our stone in the ground yet. And
let's get direction to the attorney and to our manager to repeal the ordinance as it applies to that.
I move that we, delete the portions of or amend the ordinance so that we remove the, requirement for a monetary contribution, but leave the rest of the ordinance in place from commercial.
Well, the rest of it would mean they would still have to apply the similar amount of public art on site, and they don't want to do that either. It's because the monetary
Okay,
is an alternative.
let me amend my motion.
nobody seconded this here for you guys.
Pardon?
Nobody seconded it.
Okay. I move that we, amend the public arts ordinance to remove all requirement for either funding or placing of public art for any commercial property.
Let's say non-residential, because like
Non-resident, okay, non-resident.
what commercial means, but yeah, non-residential, I get.
Do I have a second?
Second. Mr. Slavy, second. Okay, any other comments from the council on this? We'd like to hear from the public on this. And from the public. Can we get to? Yeah. You got it.
Hi, Carol Jaskolski, 541 East First Avenue. If I may, Your Honor, I'd like to verify one thing before I go down this path, and that is a question to Mr. Reaganton. Is not the theater complex in a completely different zoning district or different development standards than other commercial zoning categories in the city?
Yes.
Okay. My point is, I wish you would support this motion, and if you want to reinstate it later, I think you should, and if for no other reason, then if the idea is to help move forward the theater complex, it falls into the C3 zoning category, which has development standards, at least 4 of them, that make the building itself virtually impossible from the public view unless you're actually on their property. So I really don't think that we're on any kind of a slippery slope with a dangerous precedent or anything else. If you wanna look at, let's suspend this thing for now and revisit it later, I think it's absolutely the right thing to do.
Appreciate that. Anybody else wish to address the council on this matter? Okay, seeing none, back to council. Any other comments? Have a vote, please.
Ms. Tillett,
Yes.
Mr. Slavy,
Yes.
Mr. Creel,
Yes.
Mr. Roulette,
Yes.
Mr. Robson,
Yes.
Ms. Rich. Yes. Mr. Jerome.
Yes. Okay, new business, consideration to approve a joint participation agreement, for wastewater plant number 2, and reimbursement.
Mayor, the next, city council, the next 3 items are tied together. The first of which is an amended agreement with the Florida Department of Transportation, increasing the amount for reimbursement for the driveway associated with wastewater plant number 2, again, part of the 441-46 interchange project that required us to relocate that. In this case here, it increased it by about $175,000 based on additional costs. Again, the important thing to remember is there's no additional cost. There is no cost to the city for these projects. So what will happen is with the JPAs, it covers the cost of construction as well as the supporting engineering services for construction and inspections associated. So this first one, by resolution, is just approval of the amended JPA, increasing the contribution from Florida Department of Transportation.
So,
Second.
is there any other discussion? Anybody from the public wish to add to this, or to make comment on this item? Seeing none, back to council.
Yeah, the only comment that I'm gonna have is on the item number 3, the consideration for acceptance. So we're just voting on number 1 right now.
Any other? Have a vote, please. Ms. Johnson?
Mr. Creel,
Yes.
Mr. Robson,
Yes.
Ms. Rich. Yes. Mr. Slavy,
Yes.
Mr. Roulette,
Yes.
Ms. Tillett,
Yes.
Mr. Jerome.
Yes. Consideration to approve the construction engineering services and, Quentin Hampton, driveway construction, same project.
This action would approve change order number 3 with Quentin L. Hampton for engineering, construction engineering services and inspections associated with this project, increasing it by $67,430.
I move to approve the change order number 3.
Second.
Let's put that question, I have a question on that. I noticed that this thing was looked at way back in October. The original thing was sent back in October according to that change order, or some information on there. This is a 50% increase for a change order. It's kind of, that's quite high, for a change order. Why wasn't that approved way back when, in October, as part of the project, instead of waiting till, because of what we're approving now was known back then, is what I'm saying.
Well, candidly, with this, we knew at some point in time, as the project proceeded, we'd be doing a change order. Once the scope of the construction was better defined, for them to do the construction engineering and inspections, the last delay is a function of waiting for an amended JPA to cover the cost of this. And again, bear in mind, we are not incurring any cost for this whatsoever.
I realize there's no cost in it, but, that's really, we're all paying for it because the state's paying for it.
Well, just, no, if you have to understand though, Mayor, is that the project scope was much better defined at that point in October. We knew roughly what it was going to be. They went out for bid, came back at a higher bid price than anticipated, so we had to amend the JPA so that we could do that. We could have taken action easily back in October, but once the project, scope was well known, I think we knew what the engineering services would be. It's just a lag as a result of the bids coming in higher than anticipated.
Just my general questions on something like that, since that is a high,
I agree, but it's,
it's a high cost, you know, for a change order. And, usually like 10% or something like that, you know, they'll go that high now. Okay, do we have a motion on that yet?
We do.
We do a second, okay. Anybody from the public wish to address this issue? Seeing none, back to council, anyone? Seeing none, Ms. John, vote.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Roulette?
Yes.
Ms. Rich? Yes. Mr. Slavy?
Yes.
Mr. Crail?
yes.
Ms. Tillett?
Yes.
Mr. Gill?
Yes. Consideration of suspending the bids for driveway construction at wastewater plant number 2.
We're requesting city council to approve a contract award with Massey Corporation for the driveway there at wastewater plant number 2. Bids were solicited, and only Massey was the sole bidder on this one. The amount of the agreement would be $1,569,373.88.
Have a motion?
I'm on the approval.
A second.
Second.
Ms. Rich, second. Okay, discussion?
I only had one, yeah, I have a question. So Massey was the only bidder. Okay, there was an article from earlier in the year about Massey, being barred from bidding on work at Metro Orlando's road building agency from some under-reporting and how much they had paid, a minority and women-owned subcontractor. So, is this going to have any, they were banned from it for a year, is this gonna have any, impact on hiring them for the project? Just curious.
No, we're looking at moving forward with them, so I'm sure that was part of the background when they were reviewing the references with that.
Okay.
I think the city needs to revisit this project. The sole bidder had a recent contract problem because they underreported more than $1 million it had paid to a trucking company in which a family member was involved. The same family member appears on this $1.5 million contract we have, and the company's already asking for another $177,000. I'd like to see this table until the city goes back, does the homework, and maybe rebid it. Because they have the track record here, and what's gonna happen to us?
If I may, this project is, as Mr. Peters had talked about in late December, time's of the essence. We're looking to get this done by the end of the calendar year. If you were to rebid it and it came in at a higher price, you were gonna spend another month and a half, possibly 2 months to get the state to consider amending that. Otherwise, the city would incur the cost of the project. I think right now, you know, would we have preferred to have more than one bidder? Absolutely. We got one. It was a competitive process, but we are under a gun to get this thing done before the end of the calendar year. Another bid process could conceivably drag us out another 4 or 5 months before we take action.
Mr. Shepherd, so you're looking for some thoughts there?
Well, I mean, my thoughts are, if you are willing to incur the potential financial penalties that Mr. Pastu just outlined, I'm not gonna tell you not to, but it's really not an issue of whether you can do it, because you clearly can reject the bid and go back and rebid. It's really about whether you're willing to accept potential financial penalties. I don't even know what they're talking about, but I'm assuming they're fairly substantial.
What if it comes in higher, that we incur the full cost of it? So.
We have a second, and, we have some public, water talking, I'm assuming maybe that's the words I had. Yeah, you're in charge of South Carter like this, please, go ahead. Name and address.
Yes, my name is David Crowe. I live at 633 North Baker Street and 635 North Baker Street. The reason I'm here is to bring to your attention an issue with the awarding of this contract. There's an unresolved claim for damage to my property at 633 North Baker Street that occurred during the construction of the 7th Avenue drainage project performed by Massey Construction. In an email dated January 29th, 2016, from the Public Works Director, Mr. Peters states, and I quote, we will not be moving forward with any contracts with Massey until we can achieve some results on your claim. So what I'm hearing is that ask that the city be a stronger advocate in this matter, for me in this matter. And
Thank you. The, we were gonna take that also, that we have, there was another person,
another gentleman here does.
Len Vincenti.
Hi, I'm Len Vincenti, I'm an attorney, I'm representing, Mr. and Ms. Crowe. We're certainly not here to litigate his claim, I'm here as an observer, just to, since I'm newly engaged in this, Mr. and Ms. Crowe have been getting passed back and forth between, the city of Mount Dora, between the contractor, between the insurers involved, between their own insurer, somebody needs to step forward. They are certainly not at fault for the damage that occurred to their premises, which amounts to about $35,000 in damages. And I just wanted to bring that to the attention of this commission.
Mr. Pastor.
Yes, I spoke with Mr. Crowe yesterday and with City Attorney Shepherd prior to tonight's meeting. There is a claim associated with some work. I know that Massey has made an offer that the order did not deem to be sufficient, and so we've had some details with it, submitting it to our carrier. I suspect in talking with Mr. Crowe, he had also submitted his claim to his homeowner's insurance, which is typically a process followed by claim subrogation. Where we're going with this is, in talking with Mr. Shepherd, we'll do a little more research into how to resolve this individual claim here, so that we have a better understanding of where we've been and how we can find some resolution to it. So,
Mr. Olson?
Mr. Shepherd, does this motion, if it passes, it seems to me that the litigation or the issue, the claim that has been discussed is outside this issue. The only connection would be the term Massey is involved in the contract.
Right.
And so we can proceed with this without any negative effect on the claims that have.
Precisely. The two things are separate. I've learned about it at about 5 o'clock today. But I will, if Massey owes us some, I'll use the term reparations, then that's an issue that would be separate and we address with Massey. If Massey owes the homeowner reparations or damages, certainly that's a separate matter as well. And if the city does, after all, Massey was our contractor. But that is a separate process, and it goes through us reporting to our carrier, and then reporting to their carrier, Massey reporting to their carrier, and it may not even involve the same sets of lawyers for that reason. But
I don't have any argument with that position, he's correct.
And so my suggestion is that rather than raise potential adverse legal issues for the city, we should separate that, more power to the claimants and the claim people, folks that are on the claim to do what they need to do, and the city needs to do that. We need to do the city attorney, and we should proceed with this, because to connect it is not gonna be good.
Nobody made any suggestions to connect it, and I appreciate your comments, but it was not my intent to connect anything, and they are two separate issues, and I think we need to be aware, and I appreciate your candor coming up here tonight and to make us aware. But again, if you filed your claims, we have
Mr. Rowland had made this good question about possibly rebidding it, and I think in fairness to his concept, before I could really fully contemplate it, I'd really like to know, maybe from Mr. Peters, is just his feeling on how he feels about 1.569 million price tag, you know, the likelihood that we do significantly better versus significantly worse of taking a wait and see.
John Peters, Public Works Director, there's several issues here. In the cycle that we're in with construction, there's no guarantee. Construction costs are going up relatively badly. As the DOT puts out more projects, such as 429, the Power Parkway, there's only so much resources in the supply and demand every year. The other concern I have is we went through a fair and equitable bid process. If we went back out on the street, the other contractors now know exactly bid. And contractors are aware when you do that, and you begin to get a bad reputation, and it can hurt you down the road in future contracts. So I believe very strongly in the concept of honoring your bid process, even if you only get one bidder, because the damage down the road could be worse. But right now, if we went back out to bid, like I said, everybody knows that that's the bid.
I will definitely concur with what Mr. Peters has just referred to, and being a former person agent myself and deal with these issues is you run a very slippery slope when you start rejecting the bids like that, and for no really good valid reason at that point. And correct me if I'm wrong, this was a single bidder.
Yes.
Okay, so again, if the single bidder comes in, guess what? And the prices, you're looking at some very probably high prices at that point. So I don't think it's a good road to take by a personal opinion on this. That would be good.
With all this in mind, with a local property owner having a problem, and then a problem before with the expressway authority, if nothing else, we need to assure bonding and insurance current as a start of the job from down the line. But we can't have our citizens out here being held up the way they are for this long period of time. And you, with your concurrence of not hiring this company again, I think the least we can do is to assure bonding and insurance.
State law requires that all public construction projects over a certain amount, this is certainly over that amount, be bonded, so it's not even an option for it not to be.
And insured.
It is insured. Bonding is the
So I think I have one final comment, and it's really about our whole bid process. And I agree with what Mr. Peters said. I think it is touchy, and anecdotally, I do see more construction equipment on the road. I think it's reasonable that the market is changing. And I think one of the things that we have to do, which you touched on it very well, is about fair and equitable. That everything we need to do as a city is to be viewed as fair. And I think that's important. One of the concerns I have is that we only got one bid. So I just want us to collectively think about what is it that we do and what can the council do to provide support. And I'm being kind of silly, but I mean like offering donuts at the pre-bid meeting or whatever it is. But more seriously, what is it that we can do in a market where we are not the only game in town for construction and companies? Whatever we can do to be friendly, fair, but friendly, so that we can attract more than one bidder. Because I mean, academically, it's going to help us in the end. So that's amongst us. What can we do together? Not the answer now, but just to start thinking about.
But I do have some answers. An answer with that. This is a kind of a unique project. It's just a driveway. Dollar significant, but it may not have attracted a lot. Mr. Peters was telling me about their pre-bid conference for the utility relocations on 441, that there were a significant number of contractors, in part because of the cost associated with it, and hit a sweet spot where you'll get a lot of firms that are interested. The time frame to get it completed was also so. Those are the type of things I think, one, limited us maybe in this case, but also more positive. We may see more bidders that will send our utility relocations come in. It's on our dime to pay for it. So,
Any other questions? I have to ask the public on this? I think I already did. Okay, great. Can I vote, please?
Mr. Rolfson?
Yes.
Ms. Rich?
Yes.
Mr. Slavy?
Yes.
Mr. Crowe?
Yes.
Mr. Roulette?
Yes.
Ms. Tillett?
Yes.
Mr. Jerome?
Yes. Yes. Okay, it's approved, the consideration to approve the electric utility territorial agreement with Seco.
We're asking the city council to approve a new territorial agreement with Seco. It's a 20-year agreement that would be filed with the Public Service Commission. There is no dispute in the territory with that. Their attorney, Mr. Lewis Stone, is here. Charles Rowell, our utilities director, has been here as well. If you have any questions, but there isn't any change or any dispute, if you will, with the form of the agreement.
Who did it? Okay. We have a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the introduced ordinance 2016-03 regarding Seco Electric Utility Agreement. Nope, did I do the wrong one?
Yes.
I did, okay. Number four, consideration to approve electric utility territorial agreement with Seco.
Second.
Mr. Olson, I'll second that. Any other comments, questions from council? Anybody from the public wish to comment? Seeing none, back to council. Some more. Cheryl, vote please.
Mr. Crowe?
Yes.
Ms. Rich?
Yes.
Mr. Slavy?
Yes.
Mr. Roulette?
Yes.
Ms. Tillett?
Yes.
Mr. Rolfson?
Yes.
Mr. Jerome?
Yes. Consideration to introduce the ordinance 2016-03.
Ordinance 2016-03, read by title only, an ordinance granting a non-exclusive electric utility franchise, prescribing the terms and conditions accompanying the grant of franchise, providing for severability provisions, providing for conflicts and repealer, severability and effective date.
Okay, have a motion? So moved. Mr. Brown, and second.
I'll second that.
Ms. Rich, second. Okay. Discussion?
Was that ordinance number again?
2016-03.
Oh, three.
Anybody from the public wish to comment on this ordinance? Seeing none, back to council. Any other comments? Okay.
Mr. Crowe?
Yes.
Ms. Rich?
Yes.
Mr. Slavy?
Yes.
Mr. Roulette?
Yes.
Ms. Tillett?
Yes.
Mr. Rolfson?
Yes.
Mr. Jerome?
Yes. Consideration to approve the interim city manager employment agreement.
This past Saturday, the city council, after the interview process, selected Mr. Kim Weinbach to come prepare us. The significant aspects of the interim city manager employment agreement is the starting date of March 16th. The duties are specified certainly in the charter. What you're looking at is also compensation, which is the equivalent to $140,000 in salary, which is my current salary as well. Vehicle allowance, $200. There is also an allowance for housing at $850 per month, and then also $100 per month for cell phone allowance. Either party to terminate with 30 days notice the agreement. This was based on the details provided by Mr. Weinbach with his questionnaire that was submitted last week prior to the interviews.
Two questions, I'm assuming, Mr. Shepherd has reviewed this and found to be acceptable. Number two, it seems to me his dollar amount is, more generous than I thought it would be. Housing allowance, $250 a month.
Here's the other gentleman, he's not doing any,
Let's move that.
which is, I addressed that with him and, about the salary and everything, but, when you really look at it, the salary is significantly lower and it will go on, so. This is some of the things
Actually, in my case, it's $500 a month, and so $200 is a bargain. So,
There you go.
I move approval.
Second. We have motion second. Anybody from the public wish to address this issue? See none, back to the council. Any other comments? Real quick, before you go on that, I just want to, for this thing, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank this, our city manager, staff, Mr. Dunn, and everybody, thank our HR department, and thank the police department and our city public works, and our building department, for all their help on that Friday and Saturday, doing all the coordinating and the things that they did to get this process. I think it was a very nice, smooth process that we did, and I want to thank everybody publicly for all their help and assistance in this matter. We have a vote, please.
Mr. Robson?
Yes.
Mr. Roulette?
Yes.
Ms. Rich?
Yes.
Mr. Slavy?
Yes.
Mr. Creel?
Yes.
Ms. Tillett?
Yes.
Mr. Jerome?
Yes. Okay, consideration to approve the fiscal year 2015-16 budget amendments.
Resolution number 2016-11, read by title only, a resolution of the city of Mount Dora, Florida, pertaining to amending the budget for fiscal year 2015-16, providing for annual appropriations, and providing for an effective date.
we're asking City Council to approve this budget amendment, and what it does is essentially that we took a look at the end of, although it's a draft form, when I looked at it, certainly our general fund had a fund balance approaching $4.5 million, of which, we talked about earlier that far exceeds our 10 to 20% policy. The one caveat to that is a good portion of that is a very large receivable to the impact fee funds, particularly police and library, that are getting paid at a very slow rate. Based on that, we still have a pretty significant fund balance, and what I'm recommending is a one-time transfer that would end up forgiving the CRA debt or loan to the electric utility that took place at the end of the completion of phase 3 of the streetscape. I attached a copy of the income statement for the CRA that showed that you're looking at about ending balance, a negative balance of over $393,000. I don't really care for negative numbers. This is an opportunity to clean that up. But it also puts in place the flexibility that the council may have for spending additional CRA money. One of our concerns is we probably need to spend a little bit more on maintenance as a result of recent completion. But also you have parking needs in the future, as well as other phases of the project that need to be completed. But it does give you some more operating cushion to function with, and still keeps you within the parameters of your policy for the general fund, which I find to be reasonable. So with that, we're recommending the approval of the resolution.
Your motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
And second, discussion?
The CRA money that the taxpayers are paying for the CRA district, is allotted, and now we're taking money from electric and we're taking money from water to subsidize it, like we do in streetscapes. Do we get anything back for that as far as, CRA generated tax revenues?
Well, essentially, the way the CRA is a tax increment revenue fund within the defined boundaries, predominantly the downtown, that does go up down a portion of Fifth and into Highland as well. The essence of it is that any additional tax revenue is captured within that district stays in that district, so it doesn't find its way to the general fund. So part of it is that the money gets reinvested for capital improvement projects, and so because of the essence of the streetscape component, even though all the other utilities, electric, water, wastewater, stormwater paid for their share of the project, we still needed additional money for the streetscape and probably the road component of it as well with the construction. This cleans it up. I mean, it gets the fund back to where it should be. I'm not a big fan of interfund loans of this nature. And we get to, as you can see from the audit, draft audit numbers, you got a negative balance. this cleans it up. And it also is that, well, the $150,000 a year that was planned to forgive that or repay the loan is suddenly free and available elsewhere. But it does give you a strong, viable downtown, which I think is, you can argue is a benefit to the broader area, surrounding neighborhoods in particular.
We're gonna be able to control the money going into this, or any of the proceeds of the funds.
You are the one that, the city council that holds the purse strings. You're the ones that make the decisions going forward, how those funds are spent. So,
So I've got a couple of comments or questions. So I understand the electric fund, that the debit credit mean there is to relieve them of the lender role and put it into the general fund. So my first concern, of course, is mentally, when I went along with the rate increase, the general fund, I kind of had as that catch, we're ready to take care of it. So that would, I don't want to use the word troubling, but I'll just say it's concerning. That fund is going to be reduced. But more importantly, I guess what this is essentially doing from an accounting standpoint is it's putting us in a time machine and having us going back and saying, instead of spending $3.01 million on the CRA last year, that we now decided that it really needed to be $3.5 million. So, that trip in the time machine to just spend an extra $500,000 on the CRA this quickly without a little more blood, sweat, and tears doesn't feel right to me. That if we decided to spend that amount on the CRA and then that we were going to use the CRA funds in the future, that I would be more inclined to just stick with that, unless, of course, there's some other piece I'm missing for it. But I'm just troubled to take general funds and putting it down on the CRA like this. But again, replacing the electric with the general fund, that part of in and of itself opposed to, but I can't support, at least right now, I can't support spending another $500,000 on the CRA. But, I'm open to be convinced, but just on its surface, I don't like it.
Any other comments?
Well, it says here that provide additional capital funding for streetscape phases 4 and 5. Do we have to have the money for streetscape phases 4 and 5 and parking infrastructure needs now? Okay. So,
no, but you do have to have a plan to start building toward that. And again, I think that the asset itself will far exceed, the term if you use some debt obligation so that you're in a position to pay it off and still have an asset that's functioning in the future. So, $150,000, if you amortized over 20 years with today's interest rate, is going to buy you $2 million worth of project, roughly, maybe a little bit more. So I'm thinking in those terms. So if you got a parking issue that you may wish to do, then you can do that. If you're going to the next phase, you may look at issuing some debt obligations. Again, keep in mind those assets are going to last far longer than the period that you're borrowing for. So I think it's a logical, prudent thing to do.
as far as borrowing?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Let me ask a question. How are we getting these funds exceeding the 20% as much as they are?
Well, I think the historically what you had was that situation there. If you did not have the long-term, the debt that you put toward, again, probably better than 10 years ago, toward the police and library construction projects, you'd be in the neighborhood of, loans pushing 20%, 15, 17%, somewhere in there is what your fund is, which is good. But the city elected to finance this by providing advance from the general fund with the expectation that the impact fees would grow far greater than what they did. And they just, the downturn of the economy has slowed it immensely. So but you have to understand that fund balance, that fund equity is an IOU to that, which you have to record, but it's not cash. I think that's the key thing you have to remember. It's not cash. But if you went pretty much on a current basis of cash and current receivables, you're gonna be in the neighborhood of having 15-17% of your fund balance, which is, I think, reasonable given our current general fund.
So, I have a question. So if we took the money out of the general fund and paid off the CRA fund, and then when we got our discretionary sales tax funds, those could go back to the general fund, couldn't they?
No, unfortunately, they can't. No, they can only go forward. And you know, that may have been a policy decision where we said, let's put $500,000 of discretionary sales tax into the road portion, which I think would make sense. We didn't do that, and so as a result, I'm recommending that we adapt a little bit to the current situation, so.
Any other questions? Anybody from the public wish to comment?
Mike Masterson, 7887 Crossways Way. I'm not gonna try to delve into the, understanding of the various, CRA funds, et cetera, but it strikes me that a little bit of this money shuffling is robbing Peter to pay Paul, and now we gotta pay Peter back, and we don't have any money to pay Peter back. So we're gonna write it off, and at least that's what it seems to me. And these cash movements were used to pay for downtown phase 3 expenses, roads, et cetera, that have a 30-year lifetime, and yet we use cash to pay for a 30-year lifetime item, and that doesn't jive with my financial training, where you use short-term money to pay for short-term things. You don't, for example, you don't take out a 10-year note and then buy groceries with it, and you don't pay your mortgage with a credit card. So you need to balance the lifetime of the asset with the lifetime of the cash flows. And it doesn't look like when we're using cash for 30-year expenses, that this just didn't jive. I think they should have been paid with bond money, rather than operating cash. And if we had extra money at the end of the year, then it could have been returned to the taxpayers as lower tax rates in the following year. When I was in the Coast Guard, we used to have a principle that if the budget year came to the end, spend every dime that you got in the budget, because if you don't spend every dime, they'll take it away from you the next year. And feels a little bit like that. So perhaps you can help me understand why I shouldn't have that feeling, number one. Number two, earlier we heard the city doesn't have an operating process to keep tabs on continuing expenses like the water rates escaping our vigilance for 10 years. And I'd like to hear plans by city management, be it the council, the city manager, the finance director, whomever, to codify or embed in our charter that certain key operating items like utilities, etc., be thoroughly reviewed on a scheduled basis as to financial stability. Mr. Tester, when he said that, it scared me a little bit that we don't have, it depends on the principles of each manager that comes along. But it seemed, unless there's something codified. So if someone can help me understand that, I'd appreciate it. And I'm done.
Thank you very much. Anybody else in the public wish to address? Seeing none, back to council. Any other comments? We have a vote. Ms. Jones?
Yes. Mr. Robinson?
Yes.
Ms. Rich? Yes. Mr. Slavy?
No.
Mr. Crail?
Yes.
Mr. Roulette?
No.
Ms. Tillett?
No.
Mr. Jerome?
Yes. Okay, consideration to approve the wireless phone server, that was scratched. Okay, have a city attorney update.
I have nothing further than I've already spoken to this evening, and I'll answer any questions. That's big.
Yeah, nothing, I'm sorry, that was one of those from the.
I'm happy to answer your questions, but there's nothing pending that we haven't already updated.
Okay, let's take other questions for you while you're here on this one. Finance meeting, we're gonna be doing, we asked them about doing some interviewing and stuff for the
actually had. It depends on what you're doing on Friday. If it's simply a matter of determining what the next steps will be, I'm happy to be there, but it's, whether I need to be, that's up to you all.
I had talked with Mr. Pastu and about the possibility this coming Friday night that we do the basically we did last week where we do interviews that evening and then rank and then select. We can do it. We have the time to do it, and instead of just having a meeting where we're going to interview everybody, we only have 4. I think that's the waste of time to go through that process. Mr. Ross.
Ordinarily, I would have no problem supporting that, but I can't support it for these reasons. We sent out an RFQ, excuse me, or P,
Was it paid?
You.
RFP,
A queue is, you don't get prices, so it's a bid.
an RFP, request for proposals. And, in that, we essentially, as I understand it, sent out a formal document, published a formal document, and in that formal document, it gave all of the attorneys in Central Florida an idea of what they could expect. It was kind of like a unilateral contract. We'll send this out, and if you comply, then we would have to keep our side of the bargain. And for those 4 that submitted, they expect, for example, that, we have to follow a step-by-step process that has been outlined, and that process is that at this meeting, or Friday meeting, we were scheduled to discuss which ones we would interview formally, how will we screen them, essentially. And if that's the case, I'm concerned that we're not fulfilling our side of that bargain, because we should stick with our plan. If it delays it another week or 2, that's not necessarily a problem unless they're gonna tell me there's a rush to this. I think we should do it the way that we have documented to the world, to the public, that we will follow, and we should follow that formula. So I'm, aside from the fact that if we just did this generally, I'd be totally supporting that, but I think we better stick to at least the quasi-contractual agreement that we gave to everybody that had an opportunity to apply. So,
Just want to discuss this tonight. We get some responses input on it, and that's the process.
I think we should follow process. I don't think that this is any great rush to come to a conclusion. So, saying that, I'm going to be unavailable from the 5th for the following week until later in the week, but,
Okay. I just wanted to see if we can go through the process like we did last time and do it that way, but if that's, we want to just see which firms we want to interview, that evening, we can do that.
for example, we can discuss, I'll just give you advance notice, I believe one of the 4 firms is not qualified. And if that's the case, we can talk about that on Friday. Other than that, it shouldn't be a long meeting. I would hope that it doesn't have to be late. I hope it can be within working hours, so the staff that's here.
Well, the meeting after is already been scheduled for 6 o'clock.
Is it been scheduled for 6?
Yeah, the special meeting is scheduled for 6 o'clock. So.
All right.
Okay. The only thing, if we're going to go the other way, we have to just change a couple things as far as the, notices and things, but if we're going to stay that way, I think we're already good to go. With
6 is fine. I was just thinking of it's relatively short.
Unless, if anybody on the council, if your schedules have changed and we can go earlier, then that we can still do it, then you can still.
If it changed, I'd certainly think 4 o'clock would be better for the sake of staff that has to now take more time off. But I don't care. I just am trying to be a real nice guy.
One pleasure, I'll work with the pleasure with the rest of the council on that, and I have no problem. I know we had discussed some different times, and people had, other issues. I'm good for 4 o'clock, or 4:30, whenever the council wants to change. Everybody else is fine. Ms. Rich?
4:30?
issue. The only thing I just didn't know whether I'm supposed to be there or not.
Well, you don't want him there.
Okay.
I don't think you need to be there.
If you want me to be there, I'll be there.
I think we can handle this, by ourselves
Okay.
and get through everything, and, so, make a note of that, and, change this, so we need to have a vote on that.
Was it 4 o'clock or 4:30? We said both, so which one is it?
4:30.
4:30.
4:30, whatever it is.
Okay? 4-3-0. That's 4-3-0, this coming Friday. We need a motion or anything on that, or just, that's good enough to go?
It should be good to go.
Okay, we're good to go on that. Okay. I can go on that. I have no other, anything else for the city attorney? Anything else?
City manager's update?
I'm not gonna go through each, every item that I sent out there, there's some just internal things, for council, but, item number 2, the equal rights ordinance, apologize, we didn't get the notice out there, we were hopeful to have it tonight, it certainly will be on the March 15th, agenda for council to consider its, approval. Item 3 is, Mr. Baker, I think was in the corner there, talked with me a little bit about, whether the city was interested in continuing with the Christmas tree there at the 4th Street pedestrian wall. He's contemplating some significant renovations, and prior to taking any action on renovations and upgrade of that, probably needs direction that the council is still on board with doing that in the future. I could put something drafted, at least amendment for you to consider future meeting as well.
Quick comment on that issue, real quick before we, continue on. I have no problem with with the tree. I like the tree. I think this is one of these little things that we have in the city that makes our city so special. However, I think we have the lack of a contract.
Well, that's what you have.
Pardon me?
You'd have a contract.
Yeah, I want to make sure that we have everything contractual for the city as far as our liability, for uses, the whole thing is all spelled out, so we're not in situations that we can get into the same in the future.
Well, I just, so we're gonna get to discuss this at this, on the 15th, okay, because I did have some questions about location, that's the issue's location.
I'm not prepared, I just thought we would receive his report, and then we would put it on the 15th agenda, so we can.
Maybe on the 15th, yes.
Okay.
I'll read something up before we. Going forward, just an item that the mayor and I had a discussion regarding board and committee alternates. I think we have 2 that primarily with the Parks and Rec Advisory Board, as well as the Library Advisory Board. They're a challenge to fill, and it begs the question, why? And I say that in the sense that they are not a quasi-judicial operation or function like P&Z, but if you decided not to, you can, they're advisory board. And so if there's no quorum, they can still conduct some business because there's no official action other than providing you a recommendation. There's programs or infrastructure that we're not changing. So it's just something you can contemplate in the future. The budget discussion, I was kind of hoping to have something with that. Obviously, we're 9 o'clock approaching, and it's really probably a separate workshop in the future for council and staff to have a good discussion about the direction for developing the upcoming budget. I also had just a supplement, as referred to earlier tonight. We are looking at another reduction in our cost through our power cost charge, which is the pass-through on our electric utility bill. Again, we're seeing another reduction, about 8.7 kilowatt hours, and when you take the fixed component and the pass-through, we're looking at between 4 and 5.2% reduction for most residential power customers. And then lastly,
Pardon me,
yeah.
could you say that a little more?
Okay.
We just want to hear something good news to you.
I will repeat the good news. Lower electric rates.
Very slowly.
Yes. Lower electric rates. And the pass-through is there's 2 components to the power cost. Obviously, there's the fixed component, but also there's a pass-through charge for whatever it cost us for purchasing power. We pass that along. That component is dropping by 8.7% per kilowatt hour. course, beginning service provided after April 1st of this year. And we're estimating between 4 and 5.2% reduction for residential customers within our electric utility. So, last item is Florida League of Cities. You know, I've Mr. Ralston and Crail have talked with Lynn Tipton with that, and actually I put on here the potential of having a session on April 12th, actually talking with Lynn today. 13th or the 14th would be better. There's two components, one dealing with city charters that Ms. Tipton would handle, and then Scott Payne handles about a 2-hour session dealing with effective council tax techniques, working as a council in the process and procedure. If you were to start at 9 o'clock, or at 6 o'clock, you'd be done by 9 or so. Does the 13th or the 14th work? I may follow this up with an email just to see. April, yes. Yeah.
Both work for me.
Both work.
What about Marilyn Crotty from, did you discuss Marilyn Crotty, effective meetings? So she's the director of the Institute of Government at UCF. I know that I've spoken with Lynn as well, because I wasn't quite sure what conducted deals meant in the sense here, and so I gave her a call. She was our email training that Mr. Crowell and I went to. She's really a fabulous person, really. And she said that she had mentioned something about effective meetings. Anyway, there was a facilitator named Marilyn Crotty who also does this.
I know Marilyn, and I've been with her multiple times. She does everything from facilitate charter reviews to, if any of you watched the ethics presentation, that had the great fortune to watch me for 3+ hours.
Yes, I remember that.
Mrs. Crotty was the host, so I know where she is, what you say she is. She's a great facilitator, and she certainly can tell you about her experience with running effective meetings. She's done it for a number of my cities.
I mean, April 12th and 14th.
13th and 14th.
13th and 14th?
Yep. The 12th does not work for Ms. Tipton. 13th? Yeah.
Are we talking in the evening?
Yes.
Evening.
Yep, 6 p.m. Wednesday, April 13th.
Mr. Shepherd, is that special meeting now set the record?
I'm sorry.
That's set the record, new record now? Special meeting, that special meeting now?
For in terms of in a month,
Yeah.
probably. But you still didn't do the debate room. My last meeting started at 6:30, and they didn't have a single motion on the floor till 1:40 a.m. So you're still doing that.
We'll never get there, I'll tell you that right now. I don't know. Okay, so that one's all set. A little bit of training, sounds good. And, anything else? City Manager, council comments?
Yeah, maybe 1 second, sorry. Are we gonna discuss the special events thing here?
Well, I put that in for your consideration, there's some things internally that we need to do, but it's a policy matter down the road if you wish to, if you wish to contemplate a restructuring of your special event rates, you could do that as well. First order of business is we're going to take an attorney look into where that position belongs from a pay standpoint.
Okay, I know he does a heroic job of trying to organize things. And I guess I just have one thing I'd like to say is it seems as we're getting more and more events and especially more and more events down at the at Evans Park.
Right.
That I've been approached by some of the members of the lawn bowling club to say, can we try to maybe not have, if the lawn bowling is having a weekend event where they've got people from out of town coming in, can we please least try to kind of coordinate ahead of time, and I'm thinking that perhaps there should be a, I don't know, like an annual planning meeting or something like that to kind of try to get everybody on the same page so that we don't have events bumping up against each other and, you know, like a year calendar type of thing.
Yeah, I think Mr. Carson does a pretty nice job with it. I know he did reference that the very large wedding that we had there a few weeks ago was conflicting with a large tournament there at the lawn. So I think, you know, Mr. Carson's aware to to reach out. He does that very well with a lot of other groups with his other events. That one was, I think, unusual.
Yeah, I'm not criticizing,
No,
I'm
no,
just saying that,
no.
you know, perhaps an annual planning meeting with all of the organizations in the city.
He sent out notices, as we all know, to all council members, and we have months and months and months in advance of things that are coming out. So I echo your comments about his quality, and certainly let's at least me know, I'm assuming for everybody else is on there as well.
Any other, Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to thank Mr. Pastu. This is probably his last meeting with us, and wish you well in the future, and I appreciate it.
I've got one thing, I don't know if I should have brought that up earlier, but thank you for your time. And, now that you'll be leaving us on the 4th, and our new interim doesn't start till the 16th, do we need to, take some portion of that meeting on Friday to approve by the city council the appointment of the acting city manager, whoever that?
Well, you know, one of the things I was contemplating, I think some of you are aware that Mr. Regentin's being considered for another position, and whether his last day is gonna be this Friday the 4th or the 11th. And I just had some discussion regarding that. I'll be there at the meeting on Friday night, but I would certainly, entertain if you wanted to keep me around until Mr. Langbach shows up. I'd be more than happy to do that. It's still cold in Michigan, and so if I can stay longer down there, I'd be perfectly happy with that. But that's your call. If you want me to stick around, I'd be more than happy to take advantage of, or be a talk that up. But that's city council's discretion. You could probably talk a little bit more about it on Friday, as we tell a little bit more about Mr. Regentin and his.
Tell you what we'll do then is, with that, if we, on that, for a special meeting, as one of the items to discuss, so, because we have to, you've only discussed the items that are listed on our.
Yeah, we'll
notes,
hang
so
on the agenda.
We just put that on there, and that's something to consider for the council to consider, that's fair.
I think that's, what a perfect solution if, he's here. And I think we do that, just a heads up, we need to extend his separation agreement by an equal time period out of fairness. This council is seen as fair. And so, what a perfect opportunity to have somebody in the saddle that knows exactly what's going on and you're booked up till now.
Let me address two issues that, since I'm apparently still not gonna be here, that may come up as questions. Number one, you already approved the Lineback contract tonight, so that doesn't have to be redone. And as to if Mr. Pastu is going and Mr. Regentin is staying, no action is required. He already is the acting, or the deputy city manager. And if, on the other hand, Mr. Regentin is going and Mr. Pastu is going to stay by your agreement, then you just simply extend the agreement. So, to the extent that was gonna be a question, I've now answered it.
Easy.
I move we adjourn.
Anything else?
If there's nothing, no other comment,
Other comments?
I'll second the motion.